The orbital summit hall above Vera smelled of ozone, expensive synthetic fabric, and the copper tang of anxiety. It was a masterpiece of architectural arrogance, a transparent blister of diamond glass suspended in the vacuum, offering a panoramic view of the storm-lashed moon below. Vera was a bruise of purple clouds and lightning in the void, beautiful and hostile, much like the delegation standing on the opposite side of the negotiation table. Eli Ward adjusted his collar for the 10th time in as many minutes. The fabric of his dress uniform scratched at his neck, a constant reminder that he did not belong here. He was a systems analyst, a creature of back rooms and server farms, not a diplomat. He belonged in the cool, humming dark of a logistics hub, ensuring that grain shipments arrived on time and that fusion reactors did not drift out of alignment. He did not belong under the harsh glare of the chandelier lights, standing behind Ambassador Holloway like a decorative prop. Holloway was smiling that terrifying, teeth-baring smile that humans used when they were trying to hide their fear. He leaned over the polished obsidian table, his voice oozing a practiced, oily charm. "We are on the verge of a new era." "High Counselor," Holloway said, his voice booming slightly for the benefit of the recording drones hovering like dragonflies above them. "The peace engine is not just a gift from Earth. It is a promise of stability for your trade routes and safety for your cities." Eli looked down at his data pad, watching the energy readings from the device displayed in the center of the room. The numbers were jagged, spiking in micro-patterns that made his skin crawl. He had tried to tell Holloway earlier that the power coupling showed a 0.03% variance, but the ambassador had waved him off, claiming it was within the margin of error. Eli knew better. In his world, there was no margin of error. There were only equations that balanced and equations that collapsed. He glanced across the room, past the Veran counselors in their flowing, bioluminescent robes, and his gaze snagged on the figure standing guard near the airlock. She was impossible to ignore. Kalith. Even among her own kind, she was striking. The Verans were tall, their skin the color of polished slate, but Kalith seemed carved from something harder, something that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. She wore the ceremonial armor of the Royal Guard, a complex, segmented carapace of iridescent black metal that followed the lines of her physiology with predatory grace. A heavy pulse rifle was magnetic locked to her thigh, and a monofilament glaive rested against her shoulder. Casual as a walking stick, Eli had read her file. Everyone in intelligence had read her file. Kalith was the Star Warrior, the breaker of the siege of Antares, a woman rumored to have been genetically culled and engineered for violence since birth. She stood perfectly still, her helmet retracted to reveal a face of sharp angles and piercing, luminous amber eyes. Those eyes scanned the room with a boredom that felt more dangerous than aggression. She caught him staring. Eli froze, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He expected her to scowl, to look away with disdain. Instead, her gaze locked onto his, unblinking, dissecting him in a single heartbeat. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply acknowledged his existence as a potential threat calculation, found the result wanting, and returned her attention to the crowd. Eli looked back at his data pad, his face burning. He felt small, disposable. "Ladies and gentlemen, humans and Verans," Holloway announced, raising his hands theatrically. "I present to you the demonstration." In the center of the room, the peace engine hummed to life. It was a beautiful machine, a sphere of rotating silver rings floating above a gravity-dampening pedestal. As the reactor cycled up, the air in the room grew heavy, charged with static. The hair on Eli's arm stood up. The rings spun faster, blurring into a sphere of liquid mercury. A low thrum vibrated through the floor, a sound that was felt in the teeth more than heard in the ears. Light began to bend around the device, the room stretching and warping as the engine manipulated the local gravity field. It was designed to stabilize planetary quakes, to smooth out the violent tectonic shifts that made Vera nearly uninhabitable. For a moment, it was miraculous. The heavy gravity of the station lightened. The champagne and the flutes on the waiters' trays bubbled upward in perfect spheres. The delegates gasped in wonder. Then Eli saw the pattern on his screen turn red. It was not a drift. It was a spike, a harmonic feedback loop that was climbing exponentially. "Shut it down," Eli whispered. No one heard him over the applause. "Ambassador," Eli said, louder this time, stepping forward and breaking protocol. "We need to abort. The harmonic resonance is desynchronizing." Holloway turned, his smile fixed and brittle. "Sit down. Ward, you are ruining the moment." "It is going to pulse," Eli said, his voice rising to a crack. "It is going to—" The peace engine screamed. It was a sound like tearing metal, amplified 1,000 times. The silver ring seized, shattered, and then the gravity field inverted with the violence of a bomb going off. Chaos erupted instantly. The floor became the ceiling. 300 dignitaries were hurled upward, screaming as they slammed into the diamond glass roof. Tables, chairs, and shattered crystal became deadly projectiles. The artificial gravity generators of the station fought against the engine's chaotic output, creating sickening waves of nausea-inducing shifts. 1 second down was up. The next, sideways, was down. Eli grabbed a stanchion, his knuckles white, his legs dangling horizontally as the room twisted. Alarms blared, a cacophony of sirens that made thought impossible. "Security!" Holloway screamed, clinging to the podium which was now bolted to the wall. "This is an attack!" On the far side of the room, Eli saw Kalith move. She did not scream. She did not flail. She moved with fluid, terrifying precision, using the shifting gravity to launch herself across the room, grabbing a Veyran counselor mid-air and slamming his magnetic boots to a bulkhead before the next wave hit. Then the large holographic screens above the hall flashed red. A face appeared. It was Eli's face. Beside his ID photo, a stream of code scrolled rapidly, the command lines that had destabilized the engine. The authorization signature was unmistakable. E. Ward, clearance level 4. "He did it," Holloway shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Eli. "It is Ward. He sabotaged the core." Eli stared at the screen, horror cold in his stomach. That was his login. That was his terminal signature. But he had not written that code. He had never seen those algorithms in his life. "Arrest him!" Holloway roared. The station's automated defense turrets swiveled down from the ceiling, their laser sights painting Eli's chest with red dots. Eli did not think. He did not calculate. He let the adrenaline take the wheel. He let go of the stanchion just as the gravity shifted again. He fell toward the open service hatch near the rear of the platform, hitting the metal grating with a bone-jarring impact. He scrambled through, the door hissing shut behind him just as the first laser blasts scorched the metal where he had been standing. He ran. The service corridors were a nightmare. The gravity fluctuations were less severe here, away from the main hall. But the station was groaning, metal protesting against the shearing forces. Lights flickered and sparked, casting long, dancing shadows. Eli's breath came in ragged gasps. He had to get to a hard line. He had to prove it was not him. Someone had spoofed his credentials. Someone had used him as the scapegoat to blow up the peace talks. He turned a corner, skidding on the slick floor plates, and slammed into a wall. No, not a wall, a chest plate. A hand encased in black armor shot out, grabbing him by the throat and slamming him back against the bulkhead. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Eli stared up, wide-eyed, into the amber eyes of the Veyran warrior. Kaleth held him off the floor with one hand, her grip like a hydraulic vice. In her other hand, a combat knife hummed with lethal energy, the blade hovering an inch from his jugular. I did not do it, Eli wheezed, clawing uselessly at her gauntlet. Kaleth tilted her head, her expression unreadable. The evidence says otherwise. Human. Your signature is written in the wreckage of the negotiations. It was planted. Eli choked out, "Listen to the engine." The station shuddered violently. A deep, rhythmic booming echoed through the hull structure. Boom! Wait! Boom! Wait! It is a Fibonacci sequence, Eli gasped. The destabilization pulse. It is not random. It is math. The next gravity shear hits in 4 seconds. 3, 2. Kaleth's eyes narrowed. 1. Eli whispered. The corridor lurched. Gravity flipped 90 degrees. Kaleth did not fall. She adjusted her stance instantly, her magnetic boots locking onto the wall that was now the floor. She held Eli steady, preventing him from breaking his neck on the ceiling. As the rumble subsided, she brought the knife closer, the heat of the blade singing the fine hairs on his neck. "How did you know the timing?" she asked, her voice a low growl that vibrated in his chest. "I analyze systems," Eli said, tears of strain pricking his eyes. "I see patterns. The code that broke the engine. It had a rhythm, a stutter." He swallowed hard, the blade pressing against his skin. "And I saw the sublayer," he said rapidly. "On the big screen, just for a second, under my login credentials. There was a secondary command script. It was written in Veyran hex code, military syntax." Kaleth went still. The amber light in her eyes flickered. "Describe it," she commanded. 3 loops, a recursive bind, and a terminate command ending in the symbol for the red moon. Eli recited. Kaleth released his throat, though she kept him pinned with her body. "That is a Royal Guard override protocol," she said softly, more to herself than him. "That is impossible. Only High Command has those keys." "Someone wanted this to look like I did it," Eli said, rubbing his bruised neck. "But they used your people's tools to frame me." Kaleth's comms unit crackled in her ear. It was loud enough for Eli to hear the harsh barking voice on the other end. "Unit 7 Alpha, status report." Kaleth touched the side of her helmet. "Target acquired. Commander Vrax, I have the saboteur." "Execute him," the voice ordered coldly. "Immediate termination. We cannot allow a human terrorist to stand trial. It would insult the dignity of the crown." Kaleth froze. Her eyes darted to Eli, then back to the empty air where the voice came from. "Commander, the target claims evidence of a frame-up. The data signature contains royal protocols. We should interrogate. I gave you an order. Weapon." Vrax snapped. "Do not think. Do not analyze. Clear the stain. Kill him and return to formation." The line went dead. Silence stretched in the corridor, heavy and suffocating. Eli looked at the knife. He looked at Kaleth. He saw the muscles in her jaw tighten beneath the transparent cheek plates of her helm. He saw the conflict, the lifetime of conditioning warring with the reality in front of her. She was a tool, a weapon. She had just been told to discard a piece of evidence because it was inconvenient. Eli stepped back, raising his hands. "You know I am right," he said softly. "If you kill me, the truth dies, and whoever used your codes gets away with it." Kaleth looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, she saw not a target, but a variable that did not fit the equation she had been given. She sheathed the knife with a sharp metallic snap. "We are leaving," she said. "Where?" Eli asked, stunned. "Away from my unit," she said, grabbing his arm and hauling him toward the maintenance hatch. "Before they realize I have defected." They ran. This time, the run was a blur of terror and impossible physics. Kalith moved with a speed that Eli could barely comprehend. She did not just run. She flowed. She anticipated the gravity shifts, shoving Eli to the left or right seconds before the floor tilted. They reached the central maintenance spine, a vertical shaft 500 meters deep, lined with spinning turbines and coolant pipes. The gravity here was non-existent. "We have to jump," Kalith shouted over the roar of the turbines. "Jump!" Eli looked down into the endless, rotating dark. "That is suicide. Staying here is suicide," Kalith said. She grabbed him by the waist, pulled him closer, and kicked off the bulkhead. They plummeted into the dark. The wind roared in Eli's ears. Debris from the upper levels floated past them. Crates, tools, shards of glass. They fell for what felt like forever, twisting in the zero-G. Then, the gravity grid surged. Suddenly, down was very much down again. Their velocity multiplied, and they were falling too fast. The landing platform rushed up to meet them. "Brace!" Kalith yelled. She spun them in midair, putting her body between Eli and the ground. She fired a grapple line from her wrist, the cable singing as it caught an overhead strut. The line went taut with a bone-shattering jerk. They swung in a violent arc, smashing through a ventilation grate and tumbling into a cramped, dark service alcove. They hit the floor hard, rolling into a tangle of limbs and metal. Kalith took the brunt of the impact, her armor screeching against the steel floor. Eli scrambled back, gasping for air, his heart trying to beat its way out of his chest. He was alive. Somehow, he was alive. He looked at Kalith. She was slumped against the wall, her breathing ragged. The grapple line retracted with a hiss. A warning chime sounded from her suit. "Thermal overload. Venting required. Stay back," she rasped. The armor plates along her shoulders and ribs hissed and unlocked, sliding open like the wing cases of a giant beetle. A cloud of superheated steam and ozone billowed out, filling the tiny space. Eli recoiled, pressing himself into the corner. Through the steam, he saw the flesh beneath the armor for the first time. He had expected skin like his own, or perhaps scales. What he saw was raw, exposed biology that looked dangerously powerful. Her skin was a deep, iridescent violet, slick with coolant fluid. But it was the scars that made him flinch. Lines of luminous, glowing tissue crisscrossed her torso and neck, pulsing with a rhythmic, biological light. They looked like open wounds that had never healed, merely stabilized. To his human eyes, panicked and conditioned by years of xenophobic propaganda films. She looked monstrous, like something flayed and dangerous. He made a sound, a sharp intake of breath that sounded like revulsion. Kalith's head snapped up. She saw his face. She saw the fear. The smirk that curled her lip was not kind, but it was not cruel either. It was the expression of someone who was used to being the monster in the story. She leaned forward, the glow of her scars illuminating the cramped darkness. "You fear my body?" she asked, her voice low, vibrating with a mix of exhaustion and challenge. Eli could not speak. He just stared at the pulsing lines of light running down her neck. She reached out, taking his chin in her hand. Her fingers were hot, burning through the sweat on his skin. She did not hurt him, but she forced him to look, to really look. "Then look closer," she whispered. Eli looked. He forced his analyst brain to engage, to push past the primal lizard brain fear. He looked at the lines. They were not jagged tears, and they were geometric and precise. The light within them pulsed in time with her breathing, They aren't injuries, he whispered, the realization dawning on him. They are circuits? Bioluminescent vascular shunts, Caleth corrected him, releasing his chin. They dissipate the heat generated by my adrenal system. Without them, I would burn from the inside out during combat. She ran a thumb over the glowing line on her collarbone, and the patterns mark my lineage, my rank, and my history. This one, she traced a spiral, is for the defense of the outer rim. This one is for saving a royal heir. Eli stared. The revulsion drained away, replaced by a sudden, intense fascination. It was biological engineering raised to the level of art. It was beautiful in a way that terrified him, because it meant she was built for a purpose he could barely comprehend. I thought they were torture marks, he admitted, his voice quiet. Caleth closed her armor plates with a hiss, hiding the glow. That is what your leaders tell you, she said, standing up and checking her rifle. It is easier to kill a monster than a person. She offered him a hand. Come. We need a ship. Eli looked at her hand, the black metal gauntlet, the deadly strength behind it. He thought of the intricate, glowing map of her life hidden beneath that shell. He took her hand. They moved toward the lower docks. The station was in full chaos now. Sectors were locking down. The PA system was broadcasting Eli's name and face on a loop, branding him a traitor to the human race. Caleth led him to a private courier dock. The ship there was a sleek, needle-nosed vessel, fast and lightly armed. Can you fly this? Eli asked as they sprinted across the gangway. I can fly anything with an engine, Caleth said. They boarded, the airlock cycling shut just as a squad of Veyran guards burst onto the dock. Laser fire raked the hull. Caleth vaulted into the pilot's seat, her hands flying across the controls. Strap in. Human. Eli threw himself into the co-pilot seat. He plugged his datapad into the nav computer. I am jamming their tracking lock, he said, his fingers dancing over the screen. But we need a destination. We cannot just jump into the void. Caleth punched the thrusters. The ship surged forward, shearing through the magnetic containment field and blasting out into space. Debris from the damaged station filled the orbital path, a storm of metal and frozen atmosphere. Caleth wove through it with impossible reflexes, rolling the ship to avoid a spinning solar panel, diving under a chunk of hull plating. Where are we going? She shouted over the screaming proximity alarms. Eli pulled up the data he had siphoned from the peace engine during the glitch. He overlaid the sabotage code with a star chart. The pulse, he said, staring at the screen. The sabotage wasn't just to break the engine. It was a ping, a sonar blast meant to locate something. Locate what? Eli transferred the coordinates to the main screen. A single red dot pulsed on the night side of the planet below. There, Eli said, on the surface, an ancient ruin in the dead zone. The sabotage signal was trying to wake it up. Caleth looked at the coordinates. Her expression darkened. That is a forbidden sector, she said. Royal quarantine. Someone wanted the peace engine to fail so they would have an excuse to go down there, Eli said, to start a war to cover up whatever they are digging for. Caleth pushed the throttle to maximum. The G-force slammed them back into their seats as the ship streaked toward the atmosphere of Vera. Then we go there first, she said. Behind them, the glitter of the summit station shrank into a star, and the darkness of the planet rose up to swallow them whole. The ship died screaming. It plowed into the dunes of Vera's night side, tearing a furrow of molten glass through the landscape for half a mile before coming to a shuddering, steaming halt. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the tick-tick-tick of cooling metal and the low, resonant hum of the planet itself. Eli Ward hung upside down in the co-pilot harness, his datapad dangling by its safety cord. His vision swam with spots of light that were not stars. "Status?" he croaked. "Operational." Caleth's voice came from the darkness above him, or rather below him, given the ship's orientation. The landing gear absorbed 80% of the kinetic impact. The hull is compromised, but we are intact. She cut herself loose, dropping to the ceiling of the cockpit with a heavy metallic thud. She looked infuriatingly composed. Her armor showed scorch marks from the atmospheric entry, but she moved with the steady precision of a machine. She reached up, grabbed Eli's harness release, and caught him effortlessly as he fell, setting him on his feet like he was a child. Eli braced his hands against a bulkhead, fighting the urge to vomit. "We crashed," he said, stating the obvious because his brain needed to process the catastrophe in small, manageable chunks. "We are stranded on a hostile moon, hunted by two governments, and we have no transport." "Correct," Caleth said. She popped the emergency seal on the airlock. The door blew outward, landing in the sand with a hiss. "We must walk." She stepped out into the night. Eli followed, stumbling slightly. The landscape of Vera was a nightmare of terrible beauty. The dunes were not sand, but pulverized silica, glassy and sharp, shimmering under the light of the gas giant hanging in the sky. The horizon glowed with crawling veins of stormlight. Silent lightning that skittered across the ground like searching fingers. The air smelled of electricity and ozone. And there was a sound, a constant thrumming vibration that Eli felt in the soles of his boots. Residual energy from the peace engine. Eli muttered, pulling his jacket tighter against the freezing wind. The pulse reached all the way down here. The planetary crust is singing with it. Caleth checked the charge on her pulse rifle. She scanned the horizon, her helmet optics cycling through spectrums Eli could only imagine. "The coordinates are 12 kilometers north-northeast," she said. "Through the gravity eddies." Eli blinked. "The gravity eddies? That sounds unpleasant." "It is treacherous," Caleth corrected. She turned to him, and her external speakers crackled with a burst of static before smoothing out. "My desire is for your body to remain adjacent to mine," she said. Eli froze. "Excuse me?" Caleth frowned beneath her faceplate. She tapped the side of her helmet. "The universal translator is damaged. I meant to say, maintain tactical proximity. Do not wander off, or you will die." "Right," Eli said, feeling a flush of heat rise up his neck that had nothing to do with the environment. "Tactical proximity. Got it." He fell into step beside her, tramping through the shifting glass sands. The dynamic between them was jagged, awkward. Eli was a creature of climate-controlled rooms and theoretical models. He was logic wrapped in anxiety. Caleth was a physical fact, a blunt instrument of violence who seemed to treat the deadly environment as a mild inconvenience. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the crunch of their boots. "So," Eli said, trying to distract himself from the likelihood of death. "That translator glitch. Does it happen often?" "Only when the semantic buffers are overloaded," Caleth replied without looking at him. High-stress environments cause the linguistic algorithms to default to intimate syntax. Intimate syntax. Old High Varen, she explained. It is a language of bonding and courts. It lacks words for professional distance. In High Varen, one does not say "I will protect you." One says "I yield my blood for your breath." Eli looked at her profile, the sharp lines of her armor silhouetted against the purple sky. "That is intense. It is efficient," she countered. Why use 10 words to describe a contract when one word can describe a vow? Before Eli could argue the merits of precise legal terminology, the ground beneath him lurched. It did not shake. It simply stopped being down. One moment, Eli was walking forward, but the next, his stomach slammed into his throat and his feet left the ground. He was falling upward, toward the star-flecked void. "Whoa!" he yelled, flailing his arms. Kaleth moved faster than thought. She did not jump, she anchored. Her magnetic boots locked onto a vein of iron-rich rock beneath the sand. And she shot a hand out, grabbing Eli by the ankle just as he drifted out of reach. She hauled him back down, planting him firmly on the rock. "Gravity, Eddie," she said calmly. "The mass shadows here are unstable. You must walk heavy." "Walk heavy?" Eli squeaked, clinging to her arm. "I weigh 160 pounds. I cannot just decide to weigh more. It is not about mass," Kaleth said. She looked at him, her amber eyes glowing in the gloom. "It is about intent. You move like you are apologizing to the ground for stepping on it. You must move like you own it," she demonstrated, taking a step that crunched the glass with deliberate force. Eli tried to mimic her. He stomped. He felt ridiculous. "Better," she lied. The translator crackled again. "Your clumsiness is endearing to my soul," Eli groaned. "You mean it is a liability to the mission?" "Yes," she said, the corner of her mouth twitching. "That is what I meant." They pushed on. The eddies grew worse the deeper they went into the Badlands. Gravity became a chaotic tide. At times. Eli felt like he weighed 1,000 pounds, his knees buckling under the pressure. Minutes later, they would be leaping across fissures in slow motion, floating like dandelion seeds. During a rest break in the lee of a crystal spire, Kaleth removed her helmet to drink from a nutrient flask. Her hair, bound in tight warrior braids, was damp with sweat. The bioluminescent scars on her neck pulsed with a slow, rhythmic light. Eli watched her, fascinated despite himself. "Does it bother you?" he asked. Watching people look at you the way they do." Kaleth wiped her mouth. "You mean the fear?" "The fear," Eli said. "And the other thing, the way they look at you like you are a statue or a tank." Kaleth stared out at the stormlight crawling across the dunes. "I was bred for the Royal Guard," she said. "My genetic sequence was chosen before my conception. My training began before I could speak. To the Varen people, I am not a person. I am a flag. I am the sharp edge of the Crown's will." She turned the flask over in her hands. "They call me beautiful," she said, her voice flat. "But they mean useful. They admire the armor because it keeps the enemy away. They do not care about the flesh underneath unless it bleeds." Eli looked down at his own hands, pale, unscarred, shaking slightly from the adrenaline. "I get that," he said softly. Kaleth raised an eyebrow. "Do you? You are a logistics analyst. You move numbers. I am the guy who makes the numbers work so the people on the stage look like geniuses." Eli said, "I fixed the trade route algorithms that got Halloway promoted. I designed the security grid that keeps the station safe. But when things go wrong, when the math does not add up, I am the rounding error. I am the disposable variable." He picked up a shard of glass and tossed it into a gravity uplift, watching it spiral away into the sky. "I have always been terrified of breaking the rules," he admitted, "because I knew that if I stepped out of line, even once, nobody would come looking for me. I clung to the protocol because I thought it would protect me." He laughed bitterly. "And look where that got us." Kaleth looked at him. The amusement was gone from her face, replaced by a quiet assessment. "We are a pair, then," she said. "The weapon everyone fears, and the tool nobody values." The translator did not glitch this time. The words hung in the air, a bridge built between two lonely islands. They reached the coordinates an hour later. It was not a ruin in the traditional sense. It was a wound in the mountain, a geometric opening framed by metal that did not rust and stone that absorbed the light. The entrance was sealed by a massive door of black obsidian, etched with spiraling grooves. Eli approached the control panel. It was ancient, dusty. But as he drew near, amber lights flickered to life beneath the surface. "This interface," Eli muttered, wiping away the grime. "It is binary, but not digital. It is biological." He scanned the panel with his datapad. "It requires a key," he said. "What kind of key?" Caleth asked, stepping up beside him. Eli frowned at the readings. 2 keys, simultaneously. One is a neural handshake, a specific brainwave pattern that matches human cognitive structures. Logic, pattern recognition, and the second, thermal resonance, Eli said, high-output biological heat, the kind generated by a Veyron adrenal system. They looked at each other. "It was designed for us," Caleth said slowly. "Not you and me specifically, but our species. Together." The implications were staggering. Humans and Veyrons had only made first contact 20 years ago. This ruin was thousands of years old. "We have been here before," Eli whispered. He placed his hand on the left side of the panel. The stone hummed, cold and smooth. Caleth placed her hand on the right side. Her palm hissed against the stone, the heat of her combat metabolism reacting with the sensors. The door groaned. Dust poured from the lintel as the massive slab split down the middle and slid open. They stepped inside. The interior was a labyrinth of mirrors. The walls were made of a polished, dark material that reflected everything with perfect, terrifying clarity. But as they walked deeper, the reflections began to lag. They began to change. Eli looked to his left and saw himself, but it was not the Eli of today. This reflection was older, wearing a tailored suit, standing at the head of a massive table. He looked powerful, confident, and cold. In the reflection, he was signing a document that condemned a colony world to starvation. He was smiling. He looked away, his heart hammering. Caleth stopped. She was staring at her own reflection, in the mirror. She was not wearing armor. She was sitting on a throne of bone, a crown of iron fused to her skull. Her hands were dipped in red. A crowd knelt before her, screaming in worship and terror. "What is this?" Caleth whispered, her hand going to her weapon. "Possibilities," Eli said, his voice shaking. "It is a probability engine. It is showing us potential timelines. Who we could be if we let our worst parts win." "Ignore them," Caleth commanded, though her voice was tight. Eyes forward, they pushed through the hallway of nightmares, the reflections whispering promises of power and safety. "Just give in," Eli's reflection whispered. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. You can own them. Kill them all," Caleth's reflection murmured. "Then you will be safe." They burst into a central chamber, gasping as if they had been holding their breath underwater. The chamber was dominated by a central dais. On it, a holographic map spun in the air, a map of the sector, but with lines connecting worlds that had no current trade routes. And there was a gate. It blocked the way to the console. It was a shimmering field of energy, translucent but solid as a wall. Eli scanned it. No keypad, no biometrics, just a single pulsing sensor node in the center. "It is a synchronization lock," Eli said, reading the output on his pad. "It measures biological rhythm. Respiration, heart rate. It requires calm." Calith scoffed. We are being hunted. Calm is not in the tactical inventory. It requires synchronization, Eli corrected. 2 pulses beating as one. It is a safety measure. To ensure that whoever accesses the core is not alone, Calith finished. At war, Eli said. He stepped up to the field. He took a deep breath, trying to slow his racing heart. The field flickered, but held firm. I cannot do it, he said. My heart rate is 120. I am terrified. Calith stepped up behind him. She did not touch him at first. She just stood there, a solid wall of heat and presence. Focus on me, she said. She reached out and took his hand. She placed it flat against the center of her chest, right over the seam of her armor where the plates met. Eli could feel it, the deep, powerful thud of her hearts. Varen's had 2 primary pumps, beating in a complex, syncopated rhythm. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. It was strong. Steady. Match me, she ordered. Not a command this time. A request. Eli closed his eyes. He focused on the heat radiating through her armor. He focused on the sound of her breathing, the slow, controlled intake of air. He breathed in when she breathed in. He exhaled when she exhaled. Calith moved closer. Her other hand came up to rest on his shoulder, heavy and grounding. Do not fear the reflection, she murmured, her voice vibrating through his hand on her chest. You are not that man in the mirror. And you are not that monster, Eli whispered back. For a moment, the ruin fell away, the danger fell away. There was only the heat of her skin, the smell of ozone and sweat, and the shared rhythm of their existence. The translator in Calith's ear chirped softly, but she ignored it. Stay with me, she whispered. Eli felt his heart rate drop. He felt his breathing align with hers. The chaotic spike of his anxiety smoothed out into a sine wave that matched the powerful frequency of hers. The energy field hummed. It turned from angry red to a soft, welcoming blue. Then, with a chime like a struck bell, it dissolved. They stepped through, hands still clasped, until the console lay before them. Eli pulled his hand away slowly, missing the warmth immediately. He accessed the terminal. The data spilled onto the screen. It is not a stabilizer, Eli said, his eyes scanning the ancient text. The peace engine. It was never meant to stop quakes. What is it? Calith asked, watching the tunnel entrance behind them. It is a governor, Eli said, horror dawning in his voice. Look at this. It stabilizes trade routes by locking quantum variance. It freezes change. If you turn it up high enough, it does not just stop quakes. It stops everything. It locks a civilization in stasis. No innovation, no rebellion, just perfect, frozen order. Stability turned into a prison, Calith said. A governance weapon. Movement at the entrance. Calith spun around, raising her rifle. Contact! Figures emerged from the shadows of the mirror hall. They wore the black segmented armor of the Varen Royal Guard. But they were not alone. Moving with them were human soldiers, Black Ops gear, faces obscured by tactical masks. Commander Vrax stepped forward, his heavy plasma cannon leveling at them. Impressive, he boomed, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. You unlocked the Ancestor Gate. We have been trying to breach that for 5 years. You are working with humans? Calith asked, betrayal sharpening her voice. Vrax laughed. We are working with the architects of order. The Human Council understands what the Crown understands. Chaos is the enemy. Freedom is messy. Order requires a heavy hand. He raised a gauntleted hand. A drone hovered beside him, broadcasting his voice to the squad. The traitor Calith has been corrupted by the human influence, Vrax announced. She has compromised the site. Execute them both. They opened fire. Move! Caleth screamed. She shoved Eli behind a pillar of obsidian as the air filled with searing beams of plasma and solid projectile rounds. Caleth moved like a storm. She did not just fire back, she danced. She used the reflective pillars to bounce her laser shots, banking them around corners to hit soldiers in cover. She vaulted off walls, her glaive flashing out to sever gun barrels and armor plates. Eli huddled behind the pillar, the stone chipping away under the barrage. He looked at the console, the mechanisms. He thought, the probability engine. He tapped frantically on the interface. "Caleth, keep them in the hallway, I am trying." Caleth grunted, taking a grazing shot to her shoulder pauldron. Eli found the architectural controls. He did not have weapons, but he had geometry. He located the command for the mirror hallway. Reconfigure. "Now!" Eli yelled. He slammed his fist onto the holographic key. The hallway shifted. The floor tilted 45 degrees. The mirrors spun, creating a kaleidoscopic tunnel of confusion. The pursuers screamed as gravity shifted locally, slamming them into the walls or dropping them into sudden pits that opened in the floor. Caleth fell back, firing suppressive bursts. "We need an exit. There is a maintenance shaft behind the dais." Eli pointed. They ran for it. A human sniper, anchored to the ceiling, took the shot. It was a smart round, guided by heat. It curved around the pillar, aiming straight for Eli's center of mass. Eli saw it coming. He could not move fast enough, but Caleth could. She threw herself across his path. The bullet impacted her flank, punching through the lighter armor at her waist. Caleth grunted, a sound of wet impact that made Eli's stomach drop. She stumbled, but momentum carried them both into the shaft. As they slid down the dark chute, Eli saw where she had been hit. Violet blood sprayed against the ancient runes on the wall. The runes flared with blinding light. "Blood accepted," a mechanical voice boomed through the complex. "Bonded ally designated." Heavy blast doors slammed shut at the top of the shaft, sealing them off from the gunfire. They slid for seconds that felt like hours, dumping out into a natural cavern deep beneath the ruin. Caleth hit the ground and did not get up. "Caleth!" Eli scrambled over to her. The cavern was lit by bioluminescent moss, casting a ghostly green glow. Caleth lay on her back, her breathing shallow and fast. The wound in her side was bubbling with violet fluid. "Get the kit," she gasped, pointing to a pouch on her belt. Eli fumbled with the clasp, his hands shaking so hard he could barely work the zipper. He ripped it open. Strange instruments, vials of glowing liquid. "What do I do?" He panicked. "I do not know your anatomy." "Cauterize." Caleth gritted out. "The blue vial? Pour it in. Then the staple gun." Eli stared at the jagged wound. He had to pour acid into a hole in her body. "I can't," he whispered. "Do it! Human!" she roared, grabbing his wrist with shocking strength. "Or I bleed out in 2 minutes." Eli swallowed the bile in his throat. He popped the seal on the blue vial. "This is going to hurt," he said. "I know," she replied. He poured. Caleth screamed. It was a sound that tore at Eli's soul, a raw, animal sound of agony. Smoke rose from the wound as the chemical agent sealed the ruptured vessels. She went limp, her head lolling back, but she did not pass out. Her eyes remained open, glassy and unfocused. Eli grabbed the medical stapler. He pinched the edges of the tough alien skin together and pulled the trigger. Click, hiss. Click, hiss. He worked fast, reciting prime numbers under his breath to keep from fainting. When it was done, he sat back, his hands covered in her violet blood. Caleth's breathing slowed. The frantic pulsing of her scar lines dimmed to a soft, steady glow. "You did adequate work," she whispered. Eli let out a shuddering breath. "I thought I killed you. It takes more than a single round," she murmured. Eli reached for a cloth from the kit. He hesitated, then gently began to wipe the blood from her armor. He cleaned the area around the wound, then moved up to her ribcage, where the luminous scar lines were exposed. Up close, in the quiet of the cave, they were mesmerizing, not wounds. Art, a living map of survival. He traced one line with the cloth, his touch feather-light. Kalith watched him. Her guard was down. The pain and the fever had stripped away the warrior facade. "Why do you stay?" she asked softly. "You could have run when I fell." Eli looked at her. He saw the person beneath the propaganda. "Because you caught me," he said simply. "When I fell, he cleaned the last of the blood from her side. We are in this now." Eli said, "Both of us. They want a war. They want to turn that engine into a leash for the whole galaxy." Kalith tried to sit up, wincing. "We need to get the data off that drive. We need to decrypt the files we stole." "I know a place," Eli said, helping her prop herself up against the cave wall. "It is a long shot, a station called Latch Point." "The smuggler's den?" Kalith asked. "It is a hive of scum. It is the only place where the Alliance and the Varen Crown have no jurisdiction," Eli said. "And I know a broker there, if we can get there without killing each other." Kalith looked at him. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. The translator in her ear hummed, "My heart is capable of endurance if you provide the direction," she said. Eli smiled. "I think you mean I can make it if you lead the way." Kalith closed her eyes, resting her head against the stone. "That is what I said. Human. That is what I said." Latch Point Station was not so much built as it was accumulated. It hung in the drift of the terminus belt like a tangled knot of metal wire and refuse, a chaotic accretion of derelict hulls, scavenged thrusters, and pressurized habitats welded together by desperation and greed. It was a graveyard of ships that had refused to die, now serving as a hive for the galaxy's unwanted. Eli Ward stepped off the courier shuttle and was immediately assaulted by the smell. It was a thick, cloying cocktail of recycled air, frying oil, unwashed bodies, and ozone. The noise was a physical wall, a cacophony of a dozen languages shouting over the thrum of unauthorized fusion generators. "Stay close," Kalith murmured, her voice cutting through the din, "and try to look less like a tourist who has lost his wallet." Eli adjusted his jacket, trying to cover the scorch mark on his shoulder. "I am not a tourist. I am a fugitive. There is a difference. To the sharks in this water, the only difference is how fast you bleed," she replied. She moved through the crowd with an ease that Eli envied. Here, amidst the smugglers and the exiles, Kalith did not stand out as a monster. She was simply another dangerous variable in an equation full of them. A four-armed heavy loader droid pushed past them, carrying a crate of what looked like illicit cybernetic limbs. A group of methane breathers in encounter suits haggled over a canister of pressurized gas. Eli found himself staring at a stall selling what appeared to be memories in glass vials. He leaned in, squinting at the swirling vapor. "Do not touch that," Kalith said, her hand clamping onto his wrist. "Why?" Eli asked. "Is it radioactive?" "It is a neuroparasite," she said, steering him away. "It lets you experience the memory, but it eats two of your own in exchange. Bad trade." Eli shuddered, pulling his arm back. He bumped hard into a towering reptilian mercenary wearing a bandolier of thermal detonators. The mercenary hissed, his slit pupils narrowing as his hand went to the serrated knife at his belt. "Watch your step, soft skin," the mercenary growled. Eli opened his mouth to apologize, his brain freezing up. Logic dictated that apologies de-escalated conflict, but logic also suggested that this creature ate things that apologized. Before Eli could speak, a black-armored gauntlet rested casually on the mercenary's chest plate. Caleth stepped in, not aggressively but with a terrifying, casual intimacy. She leaned up, her helmet retracted, and smiled. It was a smile full of teeth. "He is not soft," Caleth purred, her voice low and dangerous. "He is mine, and I am very possessive of my property." The mercenary looked at Eli, then at the glowing scar lines on Caleth's neck, then at the pulse rifle magnet locked to her thigh. The math was simple. "My mistake," the mercenary grunted, stepping back and disappearing into the crowd. Eli let out a breath he had been holding for 10 seconds. "Property?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Caleth guided him toward a neon-lit alleyway, her hand lingering on the small of his back. The heat of her palm seeped through his jacket, a grounding weight in the chaos. "Would you prefer I let him peel you?" she asked, glancing down at him with amusement dancing in her amber eyes. "Besides, it simplifies things. In Latch Point, you are either a predator or prey. If you are with me, they assume you are the predator's pet. It keeps you safe." Eli frowned, though he did not pull away from her touch. "I am not sure being a pet is an upgrade from being a target." "It is better fed," Caleth said. "Come. The broker is this way." They navigated through a section of the station built from the inverted hull of a luxury liner. The corridors were lined with velvet that had rotted and gold fixtures that had been stripped, leaving only the skeletal supports. They stopped before a heavy blast door painted with glowing graffiti. Caleth pounded a rhythmic code onto the metal. The viewport slid open, a single mechanical eye word, focusing on them. "Caleth of the High Guard," a synthesized voice chirped, and "a human accessory. How delightful." "Open the door, Jax," Caleth said. The door hissed open. The room beyond was a chaotic nest of screens, cables, and cooling fans. Sitting in the center of it all, suspended in a gravity chair, was Jax. They were a Cygnian, a species that looked like a cross between a lemur and a cephalopod, with delicate, restless fingers and large, wet eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Jax spun the chair around, grinning. "The royal knife!" Jax exclaimed, and spreading forearms wide, and the fugitive analyst. "Your faces are currently worth 50,000 credits on the bounty board, each." "We are not here to sell ourselves," Eli said, stepping forward. "We need data decrypted." Jax giggled, a sound like glass breaking. "Straight to business. No foreplay? I like him. Caleth. He vibrates with anxiety. It is delicious." "Can you do it?" Caleth asked, leaning against a stack of servers. Looking bored, Jax tapped a claw on their chin. "The sabotage signature from the peace engine? Tricky. That is royal encryption layered over human military cipher. Nasty stuff. It would burn out 3 of my processors. Name your price," Eli said. "We have credits. We can transfer..." "Credits?" Jax waved a hand dismissively. "Credits are boring. Credits are just numbers. I have plenty of numbers. I want something real." Jax leaned forward, the mechanical eye zooming in on Eli. "A memory token," Jax whispered. Eli blinked. "A what?" "A raw, emotional imprint," Jax said, "extracted from the neural cortex. A moment of pure feeling. Fear, love, hate. The stronger, the better. I collect them. They are vintage." Eli took a step back. "You want me to let you dig into my brain?" "It is painless," Jax promised. "Mostly." "I can't," Eli said, shaking his head. "My memories they are private." Then get out, Jax said, spinning the chair away. No token, no decryption. Kalith pushed off the server stack. She walked over to the interface chair in the corner of the room. Take mine, she said. Eli turned to her. Kalith, no. You do not know what this thing will do. Jax spun back around, eyes widening. A Royal Guard memory? Oh, that is rare. That is top-shelf merchandise. Kalith sat in the chair. She looked at Eli, her expression calm. It is just data. Eli, she said. It is your life. Eli argued. You said yourself, they used you. Your memories are the only thing that is actually yours. You should not trade them like currency. Kalith connected the neural jack to the port at the base of her skull. Emotions are not weakness, human, she said softly. Hoarding them is, and if giving up one moment saves us, it is a bargain. She nodded to Jax. Do it. Jax typed a command. The machine hummed. Kalith stiffened, her back arching, her teeth clenched. The scar lines on her body flared brilliant white, illuminating the dark room. It lasted only 5 seconds. Kalith slumped forward, gasping. Jax pulled a glowing blue crystal from the recorder. He held it up to the light, savoring it. Oh, this is exquisite, Jax whispered. The moment you realized you were alone in the universe. Beautiful sorrow. Truly gourmet. Kalith wiped a line of violet blood from her nose. She stood up, a little unsteady. The deal is paid, she rasped. Decode the file. Jax, looking satisfied, slotted the crystal into a velvet pouch and turned to the main console. He inserted the data drive Eli had stolen. Let us see what killed the peace talks, Jax muttered. Screens lit up with cascading code. Red lines intersected with blue. Here we are, Jax narrated. The trigger signal. It was sent from 2 sources simultaneously. Source 1, the Royal Flagship Sovereign. Command codes authorized by High Commander Vrax. I knew it, Kalith whispered. Jax continued. Source 2, a secure terminal on the orbital summit station. Authorized by Supervisor Vance. Eli felt the blood drain from his face. Vance? My supervisor, Eli said, his voice hollow. The man who hired me. The man who taught me how to look for patterns. He sat down heavily on a crate. He did not just frame me, Eli realized. He groomed me. He put me in position, gave me the access, and waited for the right moment to burn me. I wasn't an analyst to him. I was a fuse. Kalith placed a hand on his shoulder. It was heavy, grounding. Then we make them regret lighting it, she said. Jax tapped the screen. There is more. The purpose of the sabotage. It was not just to start a war. It was to initiate a level 0 emergency protocol. What does that mean? Kalith asked. It means martial law on a galactic scale, Jax explained. Under the treaty, if the peace engine fails due to terrorism, an emergency balance authority is established to take temporary control of all trade routes and energy production. Temporary, Eli scoffed. There is nothing more permanent than a temporary government measure. They want to seize the lanes, Kalith realized. The Royals and the Human Council. They are creating a crisis so they can consolidate power. They do not want peace. They want absolute control. And we are the only proof that it is a lie, Eli said. Jax pulled the drive. I have unlocked the encryption key for the master file. But to access the full archive, the proof you need, you have to go to the deep storage vault in the red sector. The red sector? Kalith frowned. That is the pleasure district. It is restricted to high-clearance guild members. Or... Jax grinned slyly. Couples. Bonded pairs get a pass to the private VIP suites, which share a power grid with the vault. Eli looked at Kalith. Bonded pairs? Kalith looked at Eli. She did not flinch. We can improvise, she said. They left Jax's den, the weight of the conspiracy pressing down on them. The red sector was different. The lights were softer, the air perfumed with synthetic pheromones. The music was a low, throbbing bass that synced with the heartbeat. At the checkpoint, a massive gatekeeper barred their way. He was a multi-limbed insectoid, chitin glistening under the pink lights. "Membership?" The gatekeeper clicked. "We are together," Eli said, trying to sound confident. The gatekeeper peered at them. "You? A human stray and a Varen warhusk. Unlikely. Show me the bond." Eli froze. He did not know what a bond looked like. Kaleth moved. She stepped into Eli's personal space, erasing the distance between them. She took his face in her hands, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones. "Play along," she whispered, her voice husky enough for the gatekeeper to hear. She pulled him close, her forehead resting against his. "Do not tremble," she murmured, her lips brushing his ear. "You are mine. Act like it." Eli's heart hammered against his ribs. He could smell her, ozone and something spicy like cinnamon and hot metal. He put his hands on her waist, the armor cool under his palms. She turned her head, looking at the gatekeeper over her shoulder. She reached up and unlatched the armor plate covering her collarbone and upper chest. With a hiss of depressurization, she removed it, exposing the vulnerable dark violet skin and the pulsing bioluminescent scar that ran from her throat to her heart. To expose the scars was a supreme act of trust in Varen culture. It was intimacy weaponized. "He soothes the burn," Kaleth said, her voice dripping with a mix of defiance and possession. "Does that satisfy your curiosity?" The gatekeeper chattered his mandibles, embarrassed by the raw display. Pass quickly." They hurried through the gate and into a private booth. The door slid shut, sealing out the noise. The booth was small, dominated by a low couch. The walls were soundproofed. Kaleth did not step back immediately. She stood there, the armor plate still in her hand, her chest rising and falling. The exposed scar pulsed with a rapid, chaotic rhythm. "That was convincing," Eli said, his voice cracking slightly. Kaleth looked at him. Her eyes were dark, the pupils dilated. "Was it?" she asked. She tossed the armor plate onto the couch. She looked tired. The performance had cost her something. "You are shaking again," she noted. "It is not fear this time," Eli admitted. He looked at the exposed skin, at the line of light that marked her biology. He wanted to touch it. The desire was a sudden, sharp ache in his chest, but he held his hands at his sides. "I do not want to be another person who takes from you," Eli said quietly. "You have been used enough." Kaleth studied him. She saw the restraint. She saw the respect warring with the want. She stepped closer. "The choice is yours," she said. "Ask, and I decide." Eli swallowed. "Can I touch the mark?" Kaleth lifted her chin, exposing the throat. "Yes." Eli reached out. His fingers were trembling, but as soon as they made contact with her skin, he steadied. Her skin was incredibly warm, softer than he expected. He traced the line of the scar, feeling the pulse of light beneath his fingertips. It was like touching a living wire, humming with energy. Kaleth let out a breath that was almost a shudder. Her eyes fluttered shut. "You see?" she whispered. "It is not a weapon here. It is just me." Eli moved his hand lower, resting it over her heart. He felt the double beat rhythm, strong and fast. "I see you, Kaleth," he said. "Not the guard, not the soldier. You." For a moment, the galaxy outside did not exist. There was only the heat of her skin and the honesty of the moment. It was a promise made without words, a contract signed in breath and pulse. The comms unit on Eli's belt beeped, shattering the silence. It was a text message from Jax. "Sorry, kids. Commander Vrax offered to wipe my debt record. Nothing personal, just business." Alarms began to scream throughout the station. Kaleth's eyes snapped open. The softness vanished, replaced instantly by the warrior. She grabbed her armor plate and snapped it back into place with a violent click. "We are burned," she said. The door to their booth exploded inward. Kaleth shoved Eli to the floor as a plasma bolt scorched the air where his head had been. She returned fire, her rifle booming in the confined space. "Move!" she yelled. They scrambled out into the corridor. The red sector was in chaos. Patrons were screaming and running. A squad of royal guards, led by Commander Vrax, was pushing through the crowd, firing at anything that moved. "We cannot go back to the docks," Eli shouted over the noise. "They will have it locked down." "We go up," Kaleth commanded. "To the gravity spires." They ran through the neon-lit bazaar, knocking over stalls. Kaleth was a whirlwind of violence. She shot the locking mechanism on a blast door to seal it behind them, then spun to pistol whip a mercenary who tried to intercept them. But there were too many of them. They were being herded. They burst into a large central plaza, a hollowed-out cargo bay that served as the station's gravity hub. In the center, a massive gyroscope spun, regulating the artificial gravity for the mismatched hull sections. Vrax and his squad appeared on the gantry above. "End of the line. Traitor," Vrax bellowed. Laser sights painted Kaleth's armor. Eli looked at the gyroscope. He looked at the control terminal nearby. "Kaleth, cover me!" Eli yelled. He dove for the terminal. "What are you doing?" Kaleth shouted, dropping behind a crate and laying down suppressive fire. "I am changing the rules," Eli yelled. He hacked into the gravity controller. It was a messy, jury-rigged system, but Eli knew messy systems. He knew how to break them. He bypassed the safety limiters. He inverted the local polarity for the plaza. "Grab something," Eli screamed. He hit execute. Gravity vanished. Then it reversed. The squad on the gantry screamed as they were flung upward toward the ceiling. Crates, debris, and confused bystanders floated into the air. Eli hooked his legs around the terminal stand. Kaleth fired her grapple line, anchoring herself to the floor. "Now!" Eli shouted. He modulated the gravity grid, creating a tunnel of zero-G leading toward the upper maintenance hatch, while the rest of the room remained in heavy gravity. It was a shield made of physics. The enemy shots curved wildly as they passed through the distorted fields. They pulled themselves along the zero-G corridor, swimming through the air. Vrax, clamped to a railing with magnetic boots, watched them go. He raised his heavy cannon, aiming at Kaleth's exposed back. He had the shot. It was perfect. Kaleth looked back. She saw him. She saw the hesitation. "Shoot! Vrax!" she challenged. "Do your duty!" Vrax lowered the cannon. His face was pale. "It is not just the crown. Kaleth," he shouted, his voice thin in the chaotic air. "The Council of Balance. They watch us all. If I kill you now, they will replace me too. Run! Run before they purge us both!" Kaleth stared at him, shock rippling through her. Vrax, the unshakable hammer of the royals, was afraid. "We have to go," Eli urged, pulling at her arm. They scrambled through the maintenance hatch and sealed it. Kaleth leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "The Council of Balance," she repeated. "He is terrified of them. He let us go," Eli said. "That means this is bigger than just a coup. It is a shadow government. And I was built to serve it," Kaleth said bitterly. "My entire life. Every drill, every scar. It was all quality control for their product." She punched the wall, denting the metal. "I am going to burn it all down. Eli, I will help you strike the match," Eli promised. "But first, we need a ship." They found it in the derelict hangar at the top of the spire. It was not a machine of metal and glass. It was grown. The vessel was shaped like a seed pod, its hull a matte, organic black that seemed to breathe. It was a bioship, a rare, semi-sentient craft used by the deep space nomads. It has no controls, Eli said. Walking around it, no joystick, no keypad. It responds to neurochemical output. Kaleth said, it flies on feeling. She walked up to the hull and placed her hand on the warm, pulsing surface. Open, she commanded, not with words but with will. The ship shuddered. A membrane on the side dissolved, creating an entry port. It likes you, Eli noted. It likes that I am angry, Kaleth said. It feeds on intensity. They climbed inside. The interior was soft, the walls humming with a low, comforting vibration. There were no seats, only depressions in the floor that molded to their bodies. Eli sat down nervously, the floor wrapped around him like a warm gel. Hello? He whispered. The ship did not respond. It does not know you, Kaleth said, settling into the pilot's depression. You have to project. Do not think about coordinates. Think about safety. Think about distance. Eli closed his eyes. He tried to project safety. He thought about his childhood bedroom. He thought about spreadsheets that balanced perfectly. The ship gave a low, unhappy rumble. The lights dimmed. It thinks you are boring, Kaleth interpreted, a smirk touching her lips. Eli frowned. Try this. He thought about the moment in the booth. He thought about the heat of Kaleth's skin. He thought about the terrifying, exhilarating choice to trust her. He thought about the promise to burn it all down. The ship purred. The walls glowed a soft, golden hue. Acceptable, the ship seemed to say. We are clear, Kaleth said, her eyes glazing over as she merged with the ship's sensory net. I can feel the engines. They are hungry. Where do we go? Eli asked. The trade routes are locked. The military lanes are watched. Kaleth smiled, and it was the smile of the girl who had survived the fall. We go where maps do not work, she said. The ship surged forward, not with the roar of thrusters, but with a silent, powerful leap. They blasted out of the hangar, past the confused station defenses. Kaleth steered them away from the stars, turning the nose toward a patch of space that looked like a bruised plum, a swirling nebula of dark gas and distorted light. The forbidden corridor, Eli whispered. Ships go in there and forget how to come out. Then we will just have to remember better than they did, Kaleth said. She reached out, taking Eli's hand. The ship amplified the touch, sending a wave of reassurance through the hull. Navigation is not physics here, Eli, she said. It is intention. We do not fly with math. We fly with truth. What is our truth? Eli asked, gripping her hand as the darkness swallowed the stars. That we are still alive, Kaleth said. The ship dove into the nebula, vanishing from the scanners of the pursuing fleet, leaving only a ripple in the dark. The organic hull of the bioship hummed with a vibration that felt less like an engine and more like a purring cat the size of a frigate. It was a sensation that settled deep in the marrow of Eli Ward's bones, a constant reminder that they were flying inside a living creature. The ship, which Kaleth had decided to call the Resonance, did not have a steering yoke or a throttle. It had a mood, and right now, that mood was directly tied to the emotional volatility of its passengers. When Eli and Kaleth sat in silence, breathing in rhythm, the flight was smooth as glass. The walls glowed with a soft amber contentment. But the moment the tension spiked, which it did often, the ship reacted. I am telling you, the navigation requires a constant variable, Eli argued, pacing the small, fleshy command blister. We cannot just feel our way past a black hole. We need vectors. The ship shuddered violently. The floor rippled, sending Eli stumbling sideways. The lights flickered from warm amber to an irritated, sickly green. "You are upsetting her," Kalith said from the pilot's depression. Her eyes closed. "I am upsetting the ship," Eli sputtered, regaining his balance. "You are the one projecting aggression. I can feel it radiating off you like heat from a furnace." "I am projecting focus," Kalith corrected, opening one eye. "You are projecting panic. The resonance does not like panic. It tastes like sour milk to the neural interface." Eli threw his hands up. "It is a biological vessel. It should not have taste preferences." The ship groaned, a low, tectonic sound of disapproval. A distinct shudder rattled the bulkheads, knocking a loose datapad off a shelf. "Fine," Eli shouted at the ceiling. "I am sorry. You are a magnificent piece of bioengineering. You are the most sophisticated, responsive system I have ever encountered." He ran a hand along the wall, which felt warm and slightly yielding, like firm muscle. "Honestly," he murmured, his voice softening as he admired the seamless integration of nerve bundles and hull plating, "I have never seen anything like you. You hold us together when we should be falling apart. I would commit my entire career to understanding you." The ship went still. The green light faded, replaced by a deep, sultry crimson. The ambient temperature in the room rose by 5 degrees. The door to the corridor hissed shut with a definitive thud, and the overhead lights dimmed to a romantic twilight. Eli froze, his hand still on the wall. "What just happened?" he whispered. Kalith let out a short, barking laugh. She sat up, grinning wicked in the dim light. "I believe you just proposed," she said, "and the ship has accepted." Eli pulled his hand back as if the wall had bitten him. "I was complimenting its architecture. You told a sentient, empathetic organism that you would commit to it forever." Kalith teased, standing and stretching. Her armor creaked, the sound loud in the intimate silence. And now she is setting the mood. She is playing chaperone. The ship pulsed, a slow, rhythmic throb that matched a heartbeat. A very slow, suggestive heartbeat. "This is ridiculous," Eli muttered, his face flushing. "I am in a love triangle with a spaceship." "Better the ship than the void," Kalith said, moving to stand beside him. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was heavy, grounding. The ship sensed the contact, and the crimson light softened back to a contented gold. The door slid open again. "See," Kalith murmured. "She stabilizes when we align. She needs us to be compatible." Eli looked at Kalith. In the soft light, the sharp angles of her face were smoothed. The glowing scars on her neck were not angry warnings, but soft constellations. "Compatible," Eli repeated, the word feeling heavy in his mouth. Before the moment could settle into something more dangerous. The view screen, a transparent membrane at the front of the blister, shifted. The stars were gone. They had entered the forbidden corridor properly now. The space outside was a bruise of violet and black gas, swirling in impossible currents. There were no distinct points of light, only hazy nebulas that looked like watching eyes. The ship slowed. The hum of the drive changed from a purr to a low, mournful keen. "What is that?" Eli asked, looking at the readings on his handheld scanner. "The sensors are going haywire. I am reading temporal displacement." "Time lags," Kalith said, her hand dropping to the hilt of her blade. "The legends say this corridor does not just hide ships, it remembers them." As they drifted deeper, the phenomena began. It started with echoes. Ghostly images of vessels flickered in the gas clouds, ancient dreadnoughts from wars fought 1,000 years ago. Sleek courier ships that had vanished without a trace. They appeared for a second, solid and real, before dissolving into mist. Then came the sound. It bypassed their ears and vibrated directly against their skulls. A whispering signal, woven into the static of the nebula. Eli? Eli stopped. The blood froze in his veins. "Mom?" he whispered. The voice was clear, so it was the voice of a woman who had died when he was 12, a woman who had smelled of solder and cheap tea. "You were always the smart one." "Eli," the voice whispered, echoing from the corners of the room. "You survived. You always survive, even when everyone else burns." "No," Eli gasped, pressing his hands over his ears. "That is not real." "You left us," the voice accused, shifting from pride to sorrow. "You hid in your books and your numbers while the sickness took us. You are so good at hiding, my little genius." "Get out of my head," Eli shouted, squeezing his eyes shut. Kalith was not looking at him. She was staring into the view screen, her body rigid as stone. "Hail the shield of the crown," a chorus of voices chanted. It was the royal anthem, but distorted. It sounded like it was being sung by 1,000 dead soldiers. "Beautiful monster," the voices crooned to her, "our beautiful broken thing. We made you sharp so you could cut the world for us. Do you miss the blood, Kalith? Do you miss the applause?" "It is a lie," Kalith growled, her hands curling into fists. "Is it?" the voices whispered. "You felt powerful when you broke them. You felt right." The ship began to shake, not the gentle purr of before, but a violent, terrified rattling. The psychic assault was bleeding into the vessel's nervous system. The lights strobed wildly. "They are weaponizing our memories," Eli realized, forcing himself to think past the grief. "It is a psych response loop. It feeds on longing." He reached out, grabbing Kalith's arm. She flinched, almost striking him, her eyes wild. "Kalith, it is the nebula. It is not real." She looked at him, and for a second, he saw the terrified child buried beneath a century of armor. Then she blinked, and the warrior returned. "I know," she gritted out. "Focus on me," Eli commanded. "Not the voices. Me. I am here. I am real. I am annoying, and I accidentally proposed to a spaceship. But I am real." Kalith let out a sharp breath, the ghost of a laugh breaking the spell. "You are annoying," she agreed. The voices faded to a dull murmur as their focus aligned. The ship steadied, though the unease remained in the walls. Ahead of them, looming out of the purple fog, was a structure. It was an ancient relay, a massive rotating ring of obsidian and silver, drifting in the silence. It was dead, dark, and cold. "The source of the signal," Eli said, checking his scanner. "The archive is inside. They docked the resonance at a rusted port. The ship refused to let them go easily, the airlock cycling open with a reluctant hiss. Be careful." The ship seemed to whisper through the soles of their boots. They entered the relay. It was a tomb of silence. The air was stale, recycled for centuries by failing scrubbers. "The central core is this way," Eli said, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. They walked down a long corridor lined with mirrors. But these were not like the mirrors in the ruin on Vera. These were psych-reactive surfaces. As they walked, the reflection showed them what they feared most. Eli looked to his left. He saw himself, but he was small, helpless. He was standing in a burning room, holding a data pad, calculating the odds of his own survival while people screamed around him. In the reflection, he stepped over a body to get to the exit. He recognized the body. It was Kalith. "Coward," the reflection sneered. "You treat people like variables. You cut your losses. You will leave her too. when the math gets too hard. Eli looked away, his stomach churning. Kalith looked to her right. She saw herself standing on a pile of corpses. She was glowing, radiant, terrible. The crowd below was cheering her name. She was smiling. She was drinking in the adoration, the fear, the power. You like it, her reflection whispered. You say you are a tool, but you love being the hand that holds the knife. Without the war, you are nothing. You are just a broken girl in a metal shell. Kalith stopped walking. She stared at the image. Stop it, she whispered. Eli saw her stop. He saw what she was looking at. We have to keep moving, he said, his voice tight. It is trying to separate us, is it? Kalith asked, turning to him. Her eyes were hard, reflecting the violent image in the mirror. Or is it just showing you who you are traveling with? She gestured to the mirror. Look at it, Eli. That is what I am. That is what I was made to be. That is what they did to you, Eli said, not who you are. How do you know? Kalith snapped. Her voice echoed in the cold hall. Maybe I liked it. Maybe I enjoyed the power. She took a step toward him. And you? She challenged, pointing at his reflection. Look at you. The survivor. The one who calculates the cost and pays it with other people's lives. You are terrified of me, Eli. You have been terrified since the moment we met. I am not. You are, Kalith shouted. And you should be. Because I am a killer, and you are a coward who hides behind morality until it is inconvenient. Then you run. The words struck Eli like a physical blow. I run because I want to live, Eli yelled back, his composure shattering. Not everyone is built to be a tank. Kalith, some of us are soft. Some of us break, then break somewhere else. Kalith roared. She shoved past him, storming down the corridor into the dark. Kalith, Eli called out. She did not stop. Eli stood alone in the dark, breathing hard. The silence of the station pressed in on him. Then the lights went out. The resonance, docked outside, let out a psychic scream that vibrated through the station's hull. Without their synchronization, without the balance of their connection, the ship was destabilizing. System failure, a mechanical voice announced from the relay's PA system. Life support critical. Eli stared at the darkness. He could run. He could go back to the ship, try to override the lock, and leave. The reflection was right. He was good at surviving. He looked at the way Kalith had gone. She was walking into a trap. She was walking into the dark alone, convinced she was a monster. Eli closed his eyes. I am not a coward, he whispered to the dark. He began to run, not back to the ship, but after her. He found her in the central data core. She was standing before a massive console, her head bowed, her hands gripping the edge of the terminal until the metal groaned. She was shaking. Kalith, Eli panted, skidding to a halt. Go away, she whispered. The ship is dying. Go save yourself. No, Eli said. He walked toward her. He did not run. He walked with deliberate, heavy steps. Kalith turned. Her face was wet. She was crying, silent tears that tracked through the dust on her cheeks. Why do you not run? She asked, her voice breaking. Do you not see what I am? I see you, Eli said. He stopped inches from her. He reached out and took her hands. They were cold, trembling. I am terrified, Eli admitted. Kalith tried to pull away. I know. No. Listen to me, Eli said, holding tight. I am not terrified of you. I am terrified of wanting you. Kalith went still. What? I have spent my whole life being useful, Eli said. Being the guy who fixes things so he doesn't get thrown away. I take what I can get to survive. If I want you. If I really let myself want you, It feels like taking. It feels selfish. And I am afraid I will hurt you because I do not know how to hold something precious without breaking it. He looked up at her, his eyes wide and honest. I am not running. Kaleth, I am staying, even if it scares the hell out of me. Kaleth looked at him. She looked at his hands gripping hers. Desire is not taking, she said softly, echoing a truth she was only just learning herself. Not if it is chosen, not if it is voiced. She leaned down, her forehead resting against his. Ask me, she whispered. Stay with me, Eli breathed. I am here, she answered. They closed their eyes. They synchronized. It was not force this time. It was not a survival mechanic. It was a choice. Eli matched his breathing to hers. Kaleth slowed her hearts to match his rhythm. The trembling in the station floor stopped. The resonance, sensing the harmony, stabilized. The lights in the relay flickered back on, turning from emergency red to a steady, clean white. Desire held like a blade with discipline, not a weapon to wound. The console behind them chimed. The biometric lock disengaged. Access granted. They pulled apart slowly, the air between them charged with a new kind of electricity. Let us see the truth, Kaleth said. Eli accessed the files. The holographic display flared to life, filling the room with scrolling data, audio logs, and strategic maps. It was all there, the Council of Balance. It was not just a rogue faction, it was a joint operation. The highest levels of the Human Council and the Varen royal family had collaborated to engineer the crisis. Here, Eli pointed to a document. They call it the Unity Protocol. They plan to destabilize the peace engine to create a momentary galactic panic. The Balance Authority would step in to restore order, seizing control of all independent trade routes and energy production. And here is the villain, Kaleth said, her finger tracing a name on a personnel file. It was her commander, Vrax. He was designated as the public antagonist. He was meant to be caught, blamed, and executed to satisfy the public's need for justice, while the Authority kept the power he had seized for them. And the scapegoat, Eli said, seeing his own name, Eli Ward, expendable asset. Kaleth scrolled further. Then she froze. No, she whispered. What is it? The architect list. There, glowing in the blue light, was a name. Prince Vorian, Kaleth's brother. He signed the order, Kaleth said, her voice hollow. My own blood. He helped forge the chain around my neck. He knew you would be the one to chase me, Eli realized. He used your loyalty against you. There was one last file. It was marked Omega Contingency. Eli opened it. The peace engine. He read. It has a secondary mode, a kill switch. If the Balance Authority cannot maintain control, they can trigger the engine to create a permanent stasis field. It does not just stop travel. Kaleth read, it isolates every system. No warp, no comms. Every world becomes a prison. They would rather freeze the galaxy than let it be free. We have to broadcast this, Eli said. If we send this to the public channels, breach detected. The station AI announced, phase incursion in Sector 4. They are here, Kaleth said, her head snapping up. Who? A council strike team, Kaleth said. She could smell the ozone before she saw them. The wall behind them shimmered. It did not break. It did not open. A figure simply stepped through the solid metal. The soldier was encased in white, sleek armor that blurred at the edges. Phase tech. Kaleth shoved Eli behind the console just as the soldier fired. The shot passed through the console, phasing through the metal, and solidified only when it hit the back wall, blowing a crater in the stone. They can shoot through cover, Eli yelled. Kaleth drew her glaive and her pistol, and stay down. She launched herself at the soldier. She swung her glaive. The blade passed harmlessly through the soldier's torso as he phased out of reality. He solidified a second later, swinging a rifle butt at her head. Kalith rolled, dodging the blow. "I cannot hit them," she shouted. "They are shifting phase frequencies." Eli looked at the soldier. He watched the shimmer of the armor. He saw the pattern. "It is a sine wave," Eli shouted. "They have to materialize to fire. There is a 0.4-second delay on the recharge." He scrambled up, his eyes locking onto the shifting light of the soldier's suit. "Kalith, listen to me." He became the navigator again, not of a ship, but of the fight. 3 o'clock, phase in 2, 1, mark. Kalith did not question him. She swung blindly at empty air at 3 o'clock. The soldier materialized exactly where Eli predicted, stepping right into the path of her blade. The impact threw him back, his armor sparking. 2 more soldiers stepped through the ceiling. "0G!" Eli yelled, slapping the station's gravity override. Gravity vanished. Kalith kicked off the wall, spinning in the air like a drill. "Above you!" Eli called out. "Vector Z -10. Kalith adjusted mid-flight, firing her thrusters. She slashed down, disabling one soldier's phase pack. He solidified instantly, floating helpless. The leader of the team materialized near the console. He raised his weapon at Eli. Kalith saw him. She pushed off a floating piece of debris, launching herself like a missile. She tackled the leader, slamming him into the wall. She pinned him, her glaive at his throat. It was a clean kill. She had him. The adrenaline was singing in her blood. The old Kalith, the weapon, would have severed his head without a second thought. The leader looked at her, eyes wide behind his visor. "Do it, monster!" he spat. Kalith's muscles tightened. "Do you miss the blood?" the voices had asked. She looked at Eli. He was floating near the console, watching her. He was not looking at her with fear. He was looking at her with trust. Kalith retracted the blade. "No," she said. She slammed the pommel of the glaive into the soldier's helmet, cracking the faceplate and knocking him unconscious. "I am not a monster," she said to the unconscious man, "and I am not a tool." She turned to Eli. "Are you intact?" she asked. Eli floated over to her, grabbing her hand to anchor them both. "I am intact," he said. "That was incredible." "It was adequate," she said, though she looked pleased. "Your guidance was acceptable." They looked at the unconscious strike team floating in the room. "They know we have the data," Eli said. "They will send a fleet next. We cannot run anymore," Kalith said. She looked at the archive drive in Eli's hand. "If we broadcast this from here, the signal will be too weak. The nebula will scatter it." "We have to go back," Eli said, the realization settling like a stone in his stomach. "To the summit station. To Vera." Kalith nodded. "It is the only transmitter strong enough to reach every network in the sector." "But if we do that," Eli said, "we are walking right back into the lion's mouth. And if we broadcast this, if we reveal the conspiracy—" "Panic," Kalith said. "Riots. Maybe war. Or," Eli said, looking at the kill switch file, "or we save everyone from a cage they do not even know is being built." Kalith squeezed his hand. "We choose truth," she said. "On our terms." She pulled him toward the airlock. "Let us go start a fire." Eli Ward. The summit station was no longer a place of celebration. It had become a fortress of held breath. The glittering halls where champagne had flowed 2 days ago were now patrolled by heavy infantry, both human and Veyron. The air was thick with the scent of fear and the low, subsonic hum of the security grid running at maximum capacity. Banners hung from the vaulted ceilings, displaying the new logo of the proposed Balance Authority, a sword intersecting a shield, simple and threatening. Eli Ward adjusted the collar of his disguise, a holographic projection suit that was supposed to make him look like a mid-level Veyran dignitary. It was failing. It is tightening again. Eli hissed through his teeth, pulling at the invisible fabric around his throat. Why is it tightening? It feels like a python with a grudge. Kalith walked beside him, disguised in the flowing robes of a diplomatic acolyte, her face obscured by a heavy hood. She moved with a deferential shuffle that looked entirely unnatural on her warrior's frame. It is tightening because your heart rate is 130 beats per minute, she murmured, keeping her head down as they passed a checkpoint scanner. The suit runs on biofeedback. It constricts to remind you to remain calm. That is a terrible design feature, Eli whispered furiously. Constricting my windpipe does not make me calm. It makes me hypoxic. They turned a corner into a service corridor, away from the prying eyes of the guards. Kalith pushed him gently against the wall. "Allow me," she said, a smirk playing on her lips beneath the hood. She reached out, her hands resting on the chest of his holographic tunic. She did not fix it immediately. She let her fingers linger, smoothing the virtual fabric with a slowness that was entirely unnecessary. "You are enjoying this," Eli accused, his face flushing hot. "We are about to infiltrate the most secure server on the station. And you are teasing me." Kalith leaned in close, her eyes glinting. "If we are about to die, I would prefer you die flushed rather than pale," she whispered. She tapped the emitter node on his collarbone. The suit relaxed instantly. Eli took a greedy gulp of air. "Better?" she asked. Eli looked at her, at the way the dangerous glint in her eyes softened when she looked at him. "Much," he breathed. They separated at the junction. The plan was simple, and therefore likely to go wrong. Eli would head to the lower levels to physically jack into the treaty server farm. Kalith would ascend to the royal spire to steal the biometric keys from her brother's private quarters. They needed both to override the peace engine's lockdown protocol. "Be invisible," Kalith commanded softly. "Be careful," Eli replied. He watched her disappear into the shadows, then turned and ran toward the server farm. The server farm was a frozen forest of blinking lights and humming cooling towers. Eli worked quickly, his fingers flying across the hardline terminal. He bypassed the firewalls using the back doors he had written himself years ago, back when he thought he was building security, not a cage. He pulled the logs from the last 48 hours. The data streamed onto his datapad. He expected to find military orders. He expected to find ideology. Instead, he found money. It is not just a coup, Eli realized, staring at the numbers. It is a buyout. The data revealed a third faction, the Root Lords, a coalition of mega-corporations that controlled the shipping lanes. They had funded the sabotage. The Balance Authority was not going to nationalize trade. It was going to privatize it. They were creating a monopoly on interstellar travel, backed by the infinite power of the peace engine. "Well done, Eli." The voice came from the terminal speakers. Eli froze. A hologram flickered to life in the aisle behind him. It was Supervisor Vance. He looked tired, his suit rumpled, holding a tumbler of amber liquid. "I knew you would check the logs," Vance said, his voice weary. "You always were thorough. That is why I hired you." "You sold us out," Eli said, turning to face the ghost of his mentor. "You helped them break the engine. People died." "Vance, people always die." Vance shrugged. "This is macroeconomics. Eli, the treaty was failing. The peace was fragile. The authority brings stability and profit requires order." He took a sip of his drink. "I can help you." Eli, I have cleared a path. A shuttle is waiting in Bay 4. New identity, credits. You can disappear. Go to the colonies. Live a long, quiet life. Eli looked at the hologram. He felt the old instinct, the urge to run, to survive, to be the variable that got carried over to the next equation. What is the price? Eli asked. Give me the location of the Varen, Vance said. She is a loose end. The royals need her gone to legitimize the transition. Give us Calith, and you walk away. Eli laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. You think I am a loose end too, don't you? Eli said. I think you are a pragmatist, Vance said. Do the math, Eli. One life for a lifetime of safety. I did the math, Eli said, stepping closer to the hologram. And I realized something. You can't solve for trust if you keep dividing by fear. He typed a command into the console. Delete. The logs Vance was using to track him vanished. I am not a variable you can isolate anymore, Eli said, and I am not alone. He severed the connection. The hologram dissolved. Eli grabbed his datapad and ran. He had burned his last bridge. There was no going back to the quiet life now. High above, in the royal spire, Calith was walking through a nightmare. She moved through the gilded corridors she had grown up in, but everything felt wrong. The guards whispered as she passed, not realizing it was her beneath the robes, but speaking her name like a curse. The traitor, the mad dog, the human lover. She reached the private chambers of Prince Vorian. She slipped inside, locking the door behind her. Vorian was waiting. He stood by the window, looking out at the fleet gathering in the void. He did not turn when she entered. He was younger than Calith, softer, his armor purely ceremonial, polished to a mirror sheen that had never seen combat. I felt you come in, sister, Vorian said. You always did walk heavy. Calith threw back her hood. Why, Vorian? Vorian turned. He looked sad, not guilty, just sad. Because the galaxy is tired. Calith, he said, look at them. Humans, Varens. They fight over scraps. They demand freedom, but they do not know what to do with it. They create chaos, and chaos breeds war. So you built a cage, Calith demanded. You broke the peace engine to frighten them into submission? I built a shelter, Vorian snapped. The Balance Authority will stop the squabbling. We will freeze the borders. We will enforce peace. Yes, it is control. It is. But is control not better than extinction? Not for the people holding the gun, Calith said, her hand resting on her blade. And not for the weapon you use. Vorian sighed. You take it so personally. You were always a tool. Calith, we made you to be strong. We made you to be feared. Why do you resist your nature? Because I found something stronger than fear, Calith said. She moved, not to kill him, but to bypass him. She lunged for the desk, grabbing the biometric signet ring lying on the velvet cushion. Vorian did not stop her. He just watched her with pity. You can steal the key, sister, he said softly. But you cannot unlock the world. They want to be ruled. Calith looked at him one last time. Then they will have to learn to be brave, she said. She shattered the window with the hilt of her blade and leaped out, activating her gravity chute to dive toward the lower levels. They reunited in a maintenance substation deep in the bowels of the station, directly beneath the Great Hall. It was cramped, hot, and smelled of grease. Eli was shaking. Calith was bleeding from a cut on her cheek where a drone had grazed her during the descent. We have the codes, Eli panted, syncing his datapad with her ring. We have the proof. We have 20 minutes before the vote passes, Calith said, checking her weapon. She looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the fear vibrating in his hands, but she also saw the set of his jaw. He had not run. "Eli," she said softly. She set her rifle down. She reached up and unclasped her helmet, letting it drop to the floor. Then she reached for the seals of her chest plate. "What are you doing?" Eli asked, his breath hitching. "We are going out there to expose everything," Kaleth said. "I am done hiding." She unlocked the heavy pauldron on her left shoulder. It hit the floor with a clang, then the right, then the breastplate. She stripped the armor off, piece by piece, until she stood before him in only her thermal undersuit, a thin mesh fabric that left nothing to the imagination. The bioluminescent scars on her body were fully visible now. They were not just on her neck. They ran down her arms, across her ribs, spiraling around her spine. They were a map of every modification, every surgery, every battle the Crown had forced her to endure. And there were ports, silver input jacks at the base of her skull and along her spine where the combat drugs were injected. She did not look like a monster. She looked like a survivor. "Do not look away," she whispered. "I couldn't if I wanted to," Eli said. He stepped closer. The heat radiating from her was intense. Kaleth took his hand and placed it on the silver port at her neck. "This is where they hook me into the tactical grid," she said. "It makes me cold. It makes me stop feeling." She looked into his eyes. "Make me feel." "Eli." Eli's heart hammered against his ribs. This was not just nudity. This was a dismantling. She was giving him the blueprints to her pain. "May I?" Eli whispered, his voice trembling. "Yes," she breathed. He leaned in. He did not kiss her lips. He kissed the silver port on her neck. He kissed the scar running down her shoulder. He kissed the jagged line on her ribs. Kaleth let out a sound that was half sob, half sigh. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. Every place his lips touched, the bioluminescence flared brighter, shifting from a cold violet to a warm, burning gold. "You are not a tool," Eli murmured against her skin. "You are not a weapon. You are Kaleth. And you are not a coward," she whispered back, pressing her forehead against his. "You are the bravest man I have ever known." They held each other in the dark, skin against skin, breath against breath. It was frantic and shaky and desperate. It was the intimacy of two people who knew the world was ending and decided that the only thing that mattered was this specific, defiant connection. They were two people choosing each other in a world that wanted to own them. "We have to go," Eli whispered eventually, though he did not let go. "I know," Kaleth said. She pulled away, her eyes bright. She did not put the armor back on. She pulled a simple flight jacket over her undersuit. "No more armor?" Eli asked. "No," she said, picking up her rifle. "If they want the truth, they get all of it." The hollow array control room was guarded by two bored technicians. They didn't stand a chance. Kaleth incapacitated them with two swift strikes, non-lethal, precise. Eli leaped onto the console. "I am patching the resonance into the station's broadcast tower," Eli said, his fingers flying. "The ship will act as a signal booster. We will overwrite every screen in the sector." He slotted the data drive. "Uploading in 3 minutes," he said. "We hold the door," Kaleth said, taking up a position. But the door didn't open. The wall blew in. A concussion grenade detonated in the center of the room. The world turned white. A ringing silence slammed into Eli's skull. He was thrown backward, slamming into the console. When his vision cleared, he was on his knees. A heavy boot was on his back, pinning him to the floor. Kaleth was across the room, surrounded by a dozen royal guards. Her weapon was gone. She was crouched, ready to spring. but 5 laser sights were trained on her head. "Hold," a voice boomed. Commander Vrax stepped through the smoke, but he was not looking at Kalith. He was looking at a camera drone hovering above them. The red light on the drone was blinking. Live. Citizens of the Alliance. Vrax spoke to the drone, his voice grave. "We have interrupted a terrorist plot." Behind Vrax, a large holographic screen flickered to life. It showed footage of Eli and Kalith in the ruin on Vera. But it was wrong. The audio had been spliced. The angles were manipulated. On the screen, Kalith was shoving Eli. She was holding a blade to his throat. "Do it, human," the fabricated audio growled. "Sabotage the engine or I will gut you." Eli watched in horror. They were rewriting the story in real time. They were making him a victim and her a monster. "This man," Vrax continued, gesturing to Eli, "was coerced. He is an innocent analyst, kidnapped and forced to do the bidding of a rogue biological weapon." Vrax looked at Kalith. "Surrender. Unit 7 Alpha. Release your hostage, and we will show him mercy." Eli struggled against the boot. "No! It is a lie. She saved me." Vrax kicked him, knocking the wind out of him. Kalith stood slowly. She looked at the screen. She looked at Eli, bleeding on the floor. She realized the trap. If she fought, they would kill Eli and paint her as a murderer. If she surrendered, they would execute her and use Eli as a puppet to validate their regime. They were turning her love into a weapon against him. Kalith looked at Vrax. Her face was calm, terrifyingly calm. "You want to surrender?" she asked. She raised her hands. "I surrender." Vrax smiled. Smart weapon. But Kalith was not done. "However," she said, her voice carrying clearly to the drone microphone, "as a member of the Royal Guard, I invoke the right of veracity." The room went deadly silent. Even the guards lowered their weapons slightly. The right of veracity was an ancient pre-treaty law. It allowed a condemned warrior to challenge their accuser to single combat. If the warrior won, their testimony had to be heard by the High Court. Vrax's smile faltered. "That law is archaic. The Council does not recognize it. The Veyran people do," Kalith said, staring directly into the camera lens. "Are you a coward, Commander? Or will you face the weapon you built?" She was gambling everything on pride. She knew Vrax could not refuse a challenge on live broadcast without losing the respect of the Veyran fleet. Vrax snarled. He unclipped his heavy plasma mace. "Clear the room!" he roared. "I will put this dog down myself." The guards stepped back, forming a circle. Eli, and still pinned by a single guard, caught Kalith's eye. She signaled him with a microscopic twitch of her finger. The console. The guard holding Eli was distracted by the spectacle. Vrax lunged. The fight was brutal. Vrax was stronger, heavily armored, and wielding a weapon that crackled with enough energy to shatter bone. Kalith was unarmored, wearing only a flight jacket and agility. She dodged a swing that pulverized the floor tiles. She rolled, coming up with a discarded metal pipe in her hand. She was fast, blurringly fast, but Vrax was a tank. He clipped her shoulder with the mace, sending her spinning. She hit the wall hard, spitting violet blood. "This is what happens when tools think they are people," Vrax shouted, bringing the mace down. Kalith slid sideways. The mace smashed into the wall. Eli moved. He bit the ankle of the guard holding him. The guard yelped and loosened his grip. Eli surged forward, not toward the fight, but toward the console. He slammed his hand onto the interface. "Resonance!" he screamed into the comms. "Override!" The living ship, floating outside the station, responded to his distress. It did not use code. It used emotion. It flooded the station's network with a raw, psychic scream of protection. The screens in the room flickered. The fabricated video glitched. In the circle, Kalith saw the distraction. She dropped the pipe. She stepped inside Vrax's guard. She did not strike him. She grabbed his wrists. She synchronized. She forced her breathing to match his. She forced her heart rate to slam against his. "Look closer!" she screamed. She headbutted him. Her forehead smashed into his helmet visor. The impact shattered the reinforced glass. Vrax staggered back, blinded by shards. Kalith swept his legs. He went down with a crash that shook the room. She stood over him, panting, blood running down her face. She did not kill him. She grabbed the drone and pulled it down to her level. "My name is Kalith," she said to the galaxy, "and I am not a monster." Eli hit the final key. The archive uploaded. Every screen on the station, every datapad in the fleet, every billboard in the capital city changed. The documents appeared. The audio logs of Vorian, the payment trails from the root lords, the order for the kill switch. The truth poured out like a flood. Vrax groaned on the floor. "You fool!" The alarms in the station changed pitch. A new siren began to wail, a sound that made the teeth ache. Omega Protocol initiated, the station AI announced. Peace engine kill switch activated. Eli looked at the main screen. The peace engine, visible through the viewport, turned from silver to a dead, absorbing black. A shockwave of distortion began to ripple out from it. "The Council," Eli whispered. "They saw the broadcast. If they can't control the galaxy, they are going to freeze it." The ripple hit the nearest ship. The vessel simply stopped. Its lights died. It hung in space, frozen in a perfect, unbreakable stasis. "The wave was expanding, and we have to get to the engine," Kalith said, pulling Eli to his feet. They ran, leaving the unconscious commander and the chaos of the truth behind them, racing against a silence that threatened to swallow the stars. The universe was not ending with a bang. It was ending with a stutter. The summit station groaned under stresses it was never designed to endure. The peace engine, now a sphere of devouring black light in the center of the hall, pulsed with a rhythm that defied physics. With each beat, the reality of the station flickered. Eli Ward watched through the reinforced viewport of the control deck as a council frigate outside attempted to engage its emergency thrusters. The blue flare of the engine ignited, then simply froze in place, a solid cone of fire trapped in amber. The ship did not move. It hung suspended in a pocket of absolute terrifying stillness. "It is spreading," Eli shouted over the scream of buckling metal. "The stasis field is expanding exponentially. It has already locked the local trade lane. If it hits the hyper relay, it will freeze the entire sector." Kalith stood beside him, her flight jacket torn, her face smeared with blood and grease. She was watching the corridor monitor. "The council guard is breaching the blast doors," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "They would rather let the galaxy freeze than let us stop it." "They think they can control it," Eli said, his fingers flying across the console, trying to find a frequency the engine would accept. "They think once everything stops, they will be the only ones holding the keys to start it up again. But they are wrong. The engine is cascading. It will not just stop travel. It will stop biology. It will freeze hearts mid-beat." He slammed his fist on the console. "I cannot override it from here. The code is mutating. It has locked out external commands." "How do we stop it?" Kalith asked. "We have to go inside," Eli said, turning to her. "Inside the chamber? That is a death sentence. The gravity tidal forces will turn us to paste." "Inside the software," Eli corrected. "The neural interface. The engine was designed to be harmonized by a dual biological input. One Varen, one human. It is looking for a connection to stabilize the chaos." He looked at the black sphere pulsing in the distance. "We have to connect our minds directly to the core," Eli said. "We have to tell it to stop." Caleth looked at the heavy blast doors, which were glowing red as plasma cutters worked on the other side. "Then we need to get to the core room," she said, "and we have an army in our way." The blast doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the room. Through the haze, the silhouettes of armored troopers advanced, their weapons raised. "Surrender!" a voice barked. Caleth did not surrender. She grabbed a heavy fire suppression canister from the wall and hurled it into the breach. She fired a single shot from her pulse rifle, detonating the canister in midair. A cloud of chemical foam expanded instantly, blinding the lid squad. "Move!" she yelled. Grabbing Eli's arm, they sprinted out the side exit, diving into the labyrinth of service tunnels. The station was tilting wildly as the artificial gravity failed in rhythmic spasms. One moment they were running on the floor, the next, they were running on the wall. They burst into the main atrium, intending to cross to the engine core. It was a kill zone. Dozens of council elites were waiting, entrenched behind barricades. They opened fire. Caleth shoved Eli behind a decorative fountain that was currently spewing water sideways. Plasma bolts chewed up the marble. "We are pinned," Caleth shouted, "returning fire. I cannot clear a path through that many." Eli looked around. He calculated the angles. He calculated the odds. 0.0. "We need a miracle," Eli said. "Or," a voice crackled over the station's PA system, interrupting the evacuation sirens, "you need a very expensive distraction." The ceiling of the atrium exploded. A patchwork shuttle, painted in garish neon colors and welded together from scrap parts, smashed through the glass dome. It did not land gracefully. It crashed with the subtlety of a meteor, crushing a council barricade and skidding across the floor in a shower of sparks. The hatch blew open. Jax, the Signian information broker, sat in the pilot's seat, cackling maniacally. "Refunds are not available," Jax shrieked over the external speakers. Pouring out of the shuttle's cargo hold was the most motley collection of scoundrels Eli had ever seen. Smugglers, mercenaries, and exiles from Latchpoint Station. Leading them was the massive reptilian mercenary Eli had bumped into at the bazaar. "For the guild," the reptile roared, firing a grenade launcher into the council ranks. It was chaos. Beautiful, scrappy chaos. The Latchpoint crew did not fight with military precision. They fought with dirty, unpredictable ingenuity. Smoke bombs, flashbangs, and holographic decoys filled the air. "Go!" Jax yelled, waving forearms at Caleth. "I am billing you for the shuttle." Caleth grinned, a fierce, wild expression. "Understood," she shouted back. She hauled Eli up. With the council troops distracted by the insane assault, the path to the core was open. They ran, dodging stray fire, leaping over debris as the gravity shifted again. They reached the massive airlock of the engine core. Caleth slammed the manual override. The gears ground together, protesting before the heavy circular door rolled aside. They stepped inside. The sound of the battle faded instantly. The room was dominated by the peace engine. It was no longer the sleek silver machine from the summit. It was a suspended storm. The black sphere in the center was surrounded by orbiting rings of light that screamed with energy. The air pressure was immense, pressing against their eardrums. Two interface chairs sat at the base of the machine, connected by thick cables to the central processor. Eli ran to the human interface chair. Caleth took the Veyron one. Warning. The automated voice of the engine droned. "System instability at critical. Synchronization required immediately." Eli strapped himself in. He looked across the gap at Caleth. "This is not going to be like the ship," Eli warned, his voice shaking. "The ship likes us? This thing wants to erase us. It is going to reach into our heads and find every reason why we shouldn't trust each other." Caleth locked her restraints. She looked at him. Her amber eyes were clear. "Let it try," she said. Eli initiated the link. Neural handshake initiated. The world turned white. Eli was not in the chair anymore. He was standing in a gray, featureless office. The walls stretched up infinitely, lined with filing cabinets. The air smelled of stale coffee and dust. He looked down. He was wearing his old analyst uniform. It was too big for him. He tried to move, but his feet were stuck to the floor. "You are useful here," a voice whispered. It was smooth, logical, and cold. "Why do you struggle, Eli? You like the background, but you are safe in the background." When a man walked past him, and it was Vance. Vance did not look at him. He walked right through him, as if Eli were a ghost. "You are disposable," the voice soothed. "You are just a rounding error. If you stop the engine, you will have to stand in the light. People will look at you, they will judge you, they will expect things from you." Eli felt the old fear clawing at his throat. The comfort of being invisible. The safety of being a cog. "Stay," the voice said. "Let the galaxy freeze, but in the ice, nothing changes. In the ice, you can never be wrong." Eli closed his eyes. It was tempting. God, it was tempting to never have to be brave again, to never have to risk being hurt. Then he heard a sound. It was the sound of a heartbeat, not his own. A double beat. Thump, 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 thump. It was angry. It was fighting. Caleth. Eli opened his eyes. "I am not a ghost," he said to the gray room. He pulled his foot from the floor, but it was heavy, like stepping out of concrete. "I am not a variable," he shouted. He took a step. The filing cabinets shook. "I am the one who solves the equation." He smashed his fist into the nearest wall. The gray illusion shattered like glass. Caleth was standing on a pedestal. She was in a vast arena filled with millions of people. They were cheering. They were chanting her name. Flowers rained down on her. She tried to step down, but she couldn't. Her body was made of marble. She was a statue. Perfection. The voice whispered, "Look how they love you. You are the ideal, the warrior, the shield." Caleth looked at her hands. They were stone. She held a stone sword. She could not feel the wind. She could not feel the heat. "Why do you want to be flesh?" the voice asked. "Flesh bleeds. Flesh is messy. Flesh is weak. Stay here. Caleth, be the legend. Legends never feel pain." Caleth looked at the crowd. They weren't looking at her. They were looking at the armor. They were worshipping the shape of her, not the soul. "It is cold," Caleth whispered. "It is safe," the voice countered. "No one fears a statue. They only admire it." Caleth felt the marble creeping up her neck, sealing her throat. It would be so easy to stop fighting, to just be the hero they wanted, to be beautiful and hollow. Then she felt a hand. It wasn't a stone hand. It was a warm, shaking, human hand. It touched the marble of her chest, right over her heart. "Make me feel Eli." The memory of his touch cracked the stone. "I am not a monument," Caleth snarled. She flexed her muscles. The marble shell on her arm shattered. She dropped the stone sword. "I am not your symbol," she screamed, a raw, furious sound. The statue exploded outward, sending shards of stone flying into the crowd. The arena dissolved into mist. They met in the center of the mindscape. It was no longer gray or marble. It was a storm of raw data, swirling numbers and violet energy. "Eli!" Caleth shouted, reaching for him across the void. "Caleth!" Eli reached back. They were drifting apart. The engine was trying to keep them separated, pushing them away with waves of logic and fear. "Accept stability." The engine roared, its voice becoming a deafening, harmonious chord. "Order is peace. Chaos is pain. Choose the freeze." It showed them a vision. A galaxy stopped in time. No war, no hunger, no loss. Families frozen in mid-embrace. Soldiers frozen before the trigger was pulled. A perfect, silent museum. It is beautiful. Eli wept, the tears feeling real on his face. It is so safe. It is a lie, Caleth shouted, fighting the current to get to him. It is death. Eli, it is a graveyard with the lights on. Eli looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. He saw the messy, dangerous, terrifying life in her. You are right, Eli gasped. He looked at the vision of the frozen galaxy. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Eli yelled at the engine. It is refusing to let fear write the policy. He kicked against the current, propelling himself toward her. Caleth caught his hand. The connection snapped into place. The storm calmed instantly, swirling around them in a protective sphere. They were floating in the white space, holding on to each other. We have to retune it, Eli said, his voice echoing in the shared mindscape. We have to turn the kill switch into a broadcast. How? Caleth asked. By showing it what is real, Eli said. He looked at her. He looked at the scars on her soul that the mindscape had revealed. Caleth placed her hand on his chest. She looked into his eyes. Look closer, she whispered. It was not a tease. It was a vow. Look at the truth, she said. Look at the people. Look at what power really costs. They closed their eyes and poured everything they were into the machine. Not just their biology, their truth. Eli poured in his anxiety, his desperate need to be useful, and his decision to finally stand up. Caleth poured in her pain, her training, and her refusal to be a monster. They poured in the messy, complicated, fragile thing that was the trust between them. The engine screamed. It could not process the complexity of their humanity. It tried to reject it, but the signal was too strong. Harmonization complete. New directive accepted. The black sphere in the real world turned white. The pulse that swept out from the station was not a freeze. It was a shout. The stasis field shattered. The ships that had been frozen jerked back to life. The lights on the station flickered and steadied. But the pulse carried something else. Every screen, every comms channel, every holographic billboard from Vera to Earth lit up. The archive played. It was not a subtle leak. It was a bombardment. The audio logs of Prince Vorian planning the sabotage. The bank transfers from the root lords to the council. The video of Vrax ordering the execution of the witnesses. The schematics of the kill switch. The entire galaxy watched the conspiracy unravel in high definition. On the summit station, the fighting stopped. Council guards lowered their weapons, looking at their data pads in horror. They looked at their commanders, who were frantically trying to shut off the screens. That is your signature, sir, a young lieutenant said to his captain, pointing at a document on the screen. You authorized the jammer. The captain backed away. It was a classified order. I was following protocol. The lieutenant raised his rifle, pointing it at the captain. You were building a cage. The lieutenant spat. Chaos threatened to erupt again. The delegates in the Great Hall were screaming, pointing fingers. The Varen Royal Guard were drawing blades on the human security detail. The tension was razor thin. It was about to turn into a massacre. Then the main screen changed. It showed the engine core. Caleth stood there, supporting a limping Eli. She looked into the camera. She looked exhausted, battered, and utterly regal. Stop, she commanded. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of the engine behind it. There will be no more lies, she said, and there will be no revenge. She pointed a shaking finger at the camera. We have shown you the disease. Do not kill each other over the symptoms. The people who did this want you to fight. They want you to panic so they can step back in. She took a breath. We demand a joint tribunal, human and Varen, open to the public, every trial broadcast, every piece of evidence shown. We build the peace again. But this time, we build it with the lights on. She looked at the guards in the room. Stand down. One by one, the weapons lowered. The war did not start. The aftermath was a slow, painful exhale. The balance authority dissolved before it could ever officially form. The emergency vote collapsed within the hour. Arrests began immediately, not by a secret police, but by the station's own security forces turning on the conspirators. Eli Ward sat on a crate in the loading dock, a medic applying a synth patch to his bruised ribs. He watched the news feeds. He was being called a hero, the analyst who saved the galaxy. He hated it. Mr. Ward? A delegation of human senators approached him. They looked eager. They looked like sharks sensing fresh meat. "We would like to discuss your future," the lead senator said, smiling. "We have a position in the new administration, Director of Intelligence. We need a face like yours, a hero's face." Eli stood up. He buttoned his torn jacket. "No," he said. The senator blinked. "Excuse me? I am not your poster boy," Eli said, "and I am not going to be the new face of the old system." He picked up his data pad. "I want systemic reform. I want an independent oversight committee for the trade routes, run by the colonies, not the corporations. And I want a guarantee that no Level 0 protocols can ever be written again." "That is very ambitious," the senator said coldly. "I know the codes," Eli said, leaning in. "And I know where you bury the rest of the bodies. Do not test me." He walked away, leaving them stunned. He wasn't the quiet genius anymore. He was the loud one. Calith found Vorian in the private hangar bay. The prince was trying to board a stealth yacht. He was alone. His entourage had abandoned him the moment the broadcast hit. He froze when he saw her. He looked at the glaive in her hand. "Are you here to kill me, sister?" Vorian asked, his voice trembling. "To finish the job?" Calith walked toward him. She did not draw her weapon. "The old Calith would have," she said. "The Calith you built. She would have cut you down and felt righteous about it." She stopped a few feet from him. "But that Calith is dead." She threw a datapad at his feet. "What is this?" Vorian asked. "A confession," Calith said. "Yours." Vorian laughed nervously. "I will never sign that." "You don't have to sign it," Calith said. "It is already recorded. The engine captured everything. Vorian, your voice, your biometric, it is all there." She stepped closer, towering over him. "You have a choice. You can get on that ship and run. You can spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, hunted by bounty hunters and your own paranoia. You will die alone in some dark corner of the galaxy." She pointed to the station exit. "Or you can walk out there. You can face the tribunal. You can admit what you did. You can serve your sentence." Vorian looked at the ship. He looked at the door. "Why?" he whispered. "Why give me a choice?" "Because justice is not fear," Calith said. "It is accountability." She turned her back on him and walked away. She did not look back to see what he chose. But moments later, she heard the sound of the stealth yacht powering down, and the slow, heavy footsteps of a man walking toward judgment. The resonance drifted in the quiet of deep space, far away from the noise of the capital. The ship was humming a soft, contented tune, a deep purple vibration that filled the cabin. Eli sat on the floor of the observation blister, watching the stars. They looked different now, sharper, free. The door slid open. Calith entered. She had showered, washing away the blood and the grease. She wore simple clothes, loose trousers and a tunic, no armor. She sat down beside him. She did not say anything for a long time. She just leaned her shoulder against his. "We did it," Eli said softly. We survived, Kalith corrected. She looked at her hands. The scar lines were dim, pulsing with a slow, calm rhythm. I used to think survival was about being harder than the thing trying to kill you, she said. I thought if I made myself into a weapon, nothing could hurt me. She looked at Eli. I used teasing as armor. Eli. I used intimidation. I wanted you to be off balance so you wouldn't see how terrified I was. Eli reached out and took her hand. And I used logic as a shield, he said. I thought if I could explain everything, I wouldn't have to feel anything. Kalith turned her hand over, interlacing her fingers with his. I do not want armor anymore, she said. Not with you. I want tenderness, without strategy, without calculation. She looked at him, and her expression was open, vulnerable in a way that made his chest ache. Is that allowed? She asked. Eli smiled. It was a genuine, tired, happy smile. I think it is required, he said. He leaned in. Desire does not scare me anymore. Kalith, he whispered, because it is honest. He kissed her. It was not the desperate, frantic kiss of the station. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was a conversation without words. It tasted of peace. Kalith sighed against his lips, her body relaxing completely against his. The ship purred, the walls glowing a soft, warm gold. You make me braver. Eli Ward, she murmured. And you make me real. Kalith. A week later, the Resonance was docked at a neutral outpost on the edge of the frontier. Eli stood at the airlock, loading a crate of supplies. Kalith was checking the hull integrity. A message pinged on Eli's datapad. It was an official seal, the new Joint Council. To Envoys Ward and Kalith, the message read, Your request has been approved. You are hereby tasked with the dismantle and audit mission for the remaining Balance Authority outposts in the Outer Rim. You have full autonomous jurisdiction. Eli grinned. He looked up at Kalith, who was hanging upside down from a strut, inspecting a vent. Hey, envoy, Eli called out. Kalith dropped down, landing lightly. She smirked. I prefer ambassador with a glaive, she said. We got the job, Eli said, showing her the pad. We are official. Bridge envoys. Kalith read the message. She nodded, satisfied. We are going to clean up the mess, she said. And we are going to do it our way. Eli added, no secrets, no cages. They climbed into the ship. The Resonance woke up, sensing their purpose. The engines hummed with anticipation. Kalith settled into the pilot's depression. She looked at Eli. Ready to run the blockade? She asked, her eyes dancing with the old thrill, but tempered now with warmth. Eli strapped in. He looked at the stars. He looked at the woman who had terrified him, challenged him, and saved him. I am not running, he said. I am flying. Kalith laughed, a sound like freedom. Look closer. Galaxy, she whispered. Here we come. The ship leaped forward, turning into a streak of light against the infinite dark, heading toward a future that was messy, dangerous, and entirely their own.